check out Cajun Lights, your complete dog hunting outfitter. Tracking equipment, leashes, collars, dog supplies, and much, much more. You can find it all at CajunLights.com. And don't forget their outstanding lineup of lights. You can find it all at CajunLights.com. You know what app I use on my phone more than any other app, besides the podcast app, to listen to this here podcast? I use onX. onX Maps is the most comprehensive mapping system for hunters on the market today. I use it all the time. When I was in New Mexico, I was looking at 40,000 acres of ranch that I needed to learn. I flip open onX and just start studying the map. When I'm riding trails, I put the tracking app on. It helps me get around in strange country. I could mark water sources, food sources, bear sign, just all kinds of options within onX. You need to check out onX Maps by going to houndsmanxp.com. Click on the link on our sponsor page. You'll go right to onX Maps, and when you check out, enter the code HXP20 and you will get 20% off of your order. Know where you stand with onX. Elite nutrition products are the hottest thing on the market right now for dog and horse owners. And Houndsman XP is a dealer. You can find all their products on our website at houndsmanxp.com. Over the past 5 years, you've tuned into this podcast, and I don't take it lightly. We have built a mutual trust. And when I recommend a product, it's because I believe in it, I use it, and I'm given my seal of approval for that. I'm putting my name on that. And with Elite Nutrition products, I do trust it. I do use it. I've seen great results with their essential dogs, their pre and probiotics, their tick-borne disease treatment. It's all natural. It's a great alternative to pharmaceuticals when used appropriately. If you expect extreme performance, you need Elite Nutrition. Available from houndsmanxp.com.
It met a duck head on and with its fist and killed it in a horizontal stoop, if you want to call it that. It crushed its skull. Its eye and brains were coming out. And that's amazing. They were level, so the speed of both was enough to do that.
We were kind of far away, and you hear this thud, and I think I heard it screaming too. So I'm trying to run my old broken back to it, because I'm of the mindset you got to get there, in case they need help. It was his first one. I don't want him to lose it. And I got there and I couldn't even see him. He was amidst this junk barbed wire, and I'm screaming for him because I did finally see him and had it by the hair of his chinny chin. So I grabbed its head and I couldn't get myself out of it.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast, and this episode features another falconry husband and wife tandem in Bill and Cyndi Murrin. Bill and Cyndi were actually already falconers before they ended up getting together and getting married, so they talk some about their individual experiences, and Bill talks about writing the book Wildlife Law, Regulation, and Falconry Legal Principles, and what inspired him to kind of do that. And they talk about their involvement in different organizations and, of course, their individual falconry. So there's a lot in this episode. We're just going to jump right in and get to it. Here we go. I enjoy doing other episodes, or as many episodes as I can with husband wife, duos and stuff within falconry. It's I've always found that the more people I talk to, there's not really any in between, and that's part of the reason why I was once Jake said that he was having you guys down. I was like, cool, yeah, I can get their perspective as well, because having gotten a handful or so perspectives now from husband-wife combo, like, it's either a really good thing or for some it's a little bit more trying. It either makes things better, or sometimes it can be worse, depending on how certain people decide to look at it or how they deal with each other. That whole interpersonal relationship. But I was married to someone for a good 2 decades almost, that shared the same profession as me, for example. And sometimes people think that would be a good thing, but sometimes it turns into a competition on whose day sucked worse and everything else and all that kind of crap. So what I've noticed is sometimes that happens with falconry couples too.
I'm sure, especially when one thinks they're right and the other one, I'm not wrong. You're wrong.
Or if the dog gets skunked.
Oh yeah, we had a dog get skunked and she got mad at me.
Yeah.
I was just mad.
Yeah.
And took it out on me.
Yeah. Well, was it your fault?
No.
Well, I wanted to put the dogs back when I saw a skunk. And he said, "Oh, it went that way."
That's right.
You don't think it has a friend? It did.
So it was my fault.
Yeah. Well, and therein lies the common denominator. It's always got to be somebody's fault. And something I've noticed a lot of times is, for some reason, it's usually not the woman's fault. I don't really know why that is.
Well,
you're not supposed to notice. That's the key.
Well, I'm single again now. I'm newly divorced, so it's fine. I can make these observations now. It's all good.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, how's it worked for you guys though over the years?
Well, we've only been married a year. We've been together for a few years, but we just got married last year. She'd been into falconry a little bit before I met her. You want to explain when we met?
I was driving with my then husband in Fermilab because we're birders. We liked looking at birds, and I saw someone flying, and I'm like, another one. And I recognized the woman he was with. She taught me falconry. They had a school, so I did my internship with her, and so I just went and said, "What are you doing? Can I watch?" And they're like, "No, we're done." I'm like, "Of course you are."
I was hacking a Geo Prairie I had taken out. Fermilab that's Illinois, the National Atomic Accelerator. It's like 100 acres or something like that.
I'd say
maybe more.
A lot, yeah.
So it was a great place to fly a bird, and there was a lot of ducks. But I was able to sit out there for 2 hours and just let my bird fly. And so she comes up saying, she's a falconer too. I think you got a kestrel, didn't you?
Yes.
At that point. So she was all excited. So that's how we got to know each other. And eventually I got divorced, and eventually she got divorced. And that's when we hooked up. And this last season's the first season we've been together here flying, because we're both from Illinois and we just moved here. And the reason why I wanted to be here is because for 20 some odd years, we've been meeting here in Kansas, predominantly in the Flint Hills, to hunt prairie chickens and ducks, quail. Hopefully we'd find jackrabbits, which wasn't very common. And I just came to love the area, and brought her down a couple times. She loved it too. And so I'm semi-retired. So we moved here in May. So we've been here a year now, last year, and it's been wonderful. We love it here.
So, I mean, have you between both marriages and prior experiences and everything, have you predominantly been kind of in and around Kansas or the Midwest or whatever? I mean, pretty much, I didn't know how different you all's, up like where you lived during your upbringings and stuff like that, if it was all pretty much around the same areas or if it was,
Pretty much the same area. I was born in Chicago. We moved to Hoffman Estates, a town west of Chicago. She was in Roselle, town west of Chicago, right next to Hoffman Estates. We didn't know each other back then, so long ago. Then we moved back to Chicago, so I would never have met her. When I was 9, we moved back. So we both been in that region for all that time. My first time being out of the area is when I was in the Navy, stationed in San Francisco. I was on an aircraft carrier and couldn't do falconry then. And that was depressing to me. But I always wanted to get back into it. And once I bought a house, I was able to do it again. And it took a little while, but I was excited. I'm just been addicted to it ever since I first got into it. Maybe I should explain that. In 1969, I read an article in the Chicago Tribune called "The Cruel Beauty of Falconry." And I've tried to search for it since, but I can't find it. It'd be great if you ever find it. I would love to get a copy of it. But it was really interesting. I had asked my father if I can get a dog. And he said, well, read this article first, and then we'll talk. And I read it, and then he says, well, would you rather have a dog or a hawk? And I said, a hawk, because he always wanted to do it, but never did, so he could live vicariously through me. And he did. And so the following year, that year, for 69, he got me books and whatever. 70, I had my first bird I bought from that, I think Stromberg's down in Florida, I think it was at the time, and they sent me a Savannah hawk. I ordered a prairie falcon. Imagine that, a 10-year-old trying to fly a prairie falcon for a first bird. So anyway, they sent me a Savannah, and I knew nothing about weight control or any of that. The books I read were all from the old books from England. Didn't know about B.B. and Webster's book yet. So I made a mess of things, lost the bird, ordered another bird. The next year, it was a roadside hawk. I had ordered a prairie falcon again, got a roadside hawk. I improved. I got the bird flying to my fist, and I thought it was doing fine, and I flew it free to the fist, and that's when it said goodbye. It just went on a soar and never saw it again. And then I met, the following year, I met George Katsiopoulos, who was the NAFA president in 1967, and he taught me a bit about falconry. First thing he asked is, do you have a scale? I said, why would I want a scale? He said, you got to control the weight. I went, really? And so that's how I got a red tail. He trapped me a red tail. And then I got to know a guy named Craig Hendy. And he was a good falconer. And he taught me most of what I learned about it. We went out hunting all the time. And it was great. So through high school, he and I went hunting all the time, and trapping too. We'd trap along Lake Michigan because you can catch a lot of peregrines there, goshawks, and everything else. So it was a great place. But then we went our separate ways. We had some differences. And then Kirk Williams. Do you know Kirk? Okay, you should be interviewing him too. He has some stories. Kirk Williams got to know me, and I got him to falconry, and then shortly after that, I went to the Navy, and I was out of it for quite a few years. So, Cyndi, you want to tell them how you got started?
I saw my first bird of prey show at a zoo or Weeki Wachee, Florida, and I was just in awe that these birds would come back to you. They're just flying handler to handler, and I'm like, that bird can go anywhere. But I didn't get into that. Was when I was a kid. I tried to get into it right after high school, but didn't know the right person, and the whole building of the facilities. My dad's like, "What do you want to do that for?" So went on the back burner until I was like 30, and I was able to take that class where I had to cut up rabbits, where I couldn't even cut up a supermarket chicken. My mom would show me at Thanksgiving the giblets, and I'm like, yuck, I'm out of here. So that class gave me the experience of cutting up rabbits and cleaning mews and talking to people about what I learned is they did when rehabbers or education birds. So I had to stand there with a bird on my fist and talk about it. And then that gave me the confidence. I was in a townhouse at that time, and lo and behold, it turned out I have a neighbor that's doing the class, and he was going to go get his license. And I'm like, but we're in a townhouse. He's like, well, I'll put a little muse on my duck. I'm like, I can do that. My brother built me something, and we went and took the test together at a state park and waited on pins and needles because you had no idea if you passed or not. The test is so weird. I remember asking a friend, how do you think you did? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, how can you not know? I didn't know how I did, but I passed, and I got a kestrel shortly afterwards.
And that was the Itasca Nature Center in Itasca, Illinois. Debbie Farley managed it, and she taught the classes, and she brought a lot of people into falconry. And she was predominantly a rehabber, but she was trying to do falconry too. And so I took her out a lot and taught her a lot of things about falconry. And so she did get a lot of people into it and did a great job promoting falconry and awareness of birds of prey. And I think she brought a lot to the falconer community with her rehab knowledge, where falconers could have problems. Rehabbers have a tremendous amount of knowledge that they can contribute to falconers, but there's always this tension between them.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. No, it's not right. It's not good.
Yeah, I mean, there's some that have great relationships, and just like anything else, there's some that have great relationships and some that don't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, but that's life in general, I guess, right?
Yeah. And, a lot of people think the way I do it's the only way, and what you do something different, it's wrong. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who think that way, and it's awful.
Falconers and their opinions.
Oh, yeah.
Falconers bring a great deal to the rehabbers too, if they're open-minded. Getting those birds back in the wild. And I remember when I started, it's like, oh, you can take a rehab bird and turn it into a falconry bird. It's like, why not? That would be the best boost for that bird. If you can get it hunting with you, it's going to go back to the wild knowing how to hunt and legged up.
Mm-hmm. And something that I observed that Debbie had explained to me with Cooper's hawks, this rehab again, we're talking about rehab birds. So they'd come in with something wrong, broken wing or something they fix, and the bird might be able to be released. But anyway, the important thing here is when they got these Cooper's hawks, they were darn near death's door, right? Because they were starving and you could pick them up. So they'd bring them in. It was very interesting how she observed that after they made it back, if they lived, they made it back, to full health, they acted like imprints. Now, these are passage birds. These are immature birds, maybe been, on their own for a month or two, and they acted like imprints. And they're like, wow, that's very interesting. I think Ronald Stevens, in one of his books, mentioned that too, that if they're rehabbed and they're starving and you bring them back, they're like, oh my God, you're my hero. So they can make the best birds. So that's an interesting thing to learn.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with one of the best kestrel I've ever flown was like that. Trapped in a warehouse, was pretty low in weight, whenever I ended up with her. And yeah, I mean, same kind of deal. For whatever reason, those kind of birds, they end up just performing that little bit extra for you for whatever reason. So
yeah. Well, I think they imprint on you. In essence, it's like that. It's not actual imprint, but it's, they look at you as a savior.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine, he used to fly haggard goshawks back in the 60s, and he says the best bird he's ever flown. And he said the reason why is because they know what it's like to be really hungry. And the way he put it is like, I found a good thing and I'm not letting go of it. I thought that was an interesting observation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's cool though that you guys, had the paths eventually cross like you did and had different experiences kind of independently of each other. I mean, I've noticed that sometimes some of the relationships where, one falconer, or one person becomes the falconer from their spouse and stuff. I mean, everybody kind of gets into it and deals with that whole thing differently. But I've always the few couples that I've talked to where they were already falconers when they met and stuff. It's definitely kind of a different experience dynamic than someone learned from their spouse or whatever. So
right. They bring different stories and different ideas and experiences, and they can complement each other.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and so how many years were you? Remind me again. How many years were you both in falconry before you ended up meeting? And I mean, I know you've only been together a relatively short amount of time, and stuff, but. How many years have you both been in falconry?
69 is when I got into it.
Yeah.
But was out of it during the military time and shortly after that, before I could buy a house and have a muse. So that's how many years,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Long time.
Yeah. And you said about what, 20 years for you, Cyndi? Is that right? Something like
I
that?
think close to 30. I think
Okay.
I got mid-90s when I
Okay.
started.
All right.
Yeah, and we met around, I think, 90. No, it couldn't be. No, it had to be around 2000. That's right. Losing track of time. So yeah, I think around 2000 is when we met. And then I got divorced 2012. She got divorced about 5 years ago, I think it is now. And then we got married last year, and we're really enjoying falconry together. She loves red tails predominantly.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to find spots where there are jackrabbits. And, first year it's kind of rough. You're just settling in. So she had a red tail, and we found places for rabbits, but it was tough. Getting to know a new area was tough.
Yeah.
So when tick season opened up, she let the bird go, and then we trapped a kestrel. And we had a ball with it up until just a few weeks ago. She let it go. The reason being is we bagged it too many times on sparrows. And I had a feeling it might happen. And then they start refusing the wild quarry and only want it out of your hand. And so we're like, okay. We would drive down the roads and fly it out the window. And it would follow real well, fly through the window as we're driving. Mm-hmm. But it would not take anything if we didn't throw it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. Maybe.
And he didn't try that hard either.
No, we just had fun.
Yeah, they're adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I've flown have needed about, anywhere between like 4 to about a half dozen setups, mock setups as close to a legit setup as possible before they'll start. But then once they're off to the races, they're off to the races. It's hard to get them to shut down after that. Once you got them going your way, for sure, they enjoy it a lot. But
well, that would be fun.
Yeah. But so did you not ever really get into squirrel hawking with red tails then? Or?
I had really bad experience. I never tried for squirrels, but
Mm-hmm.
When you're desperate and they're there, and I can't say no. Go after the bunny right here. But I had one get bit. I had to walk through knee-high ice water. It caught it and was, just sitting on the ice with its feet. It drowned the squirrel. Mm-hmm. So, and then I tore my ACL after a squirrel. So I'm like, I'm not doing. And then one got almost stuck up in the tree, and was going to just sit up in the tree canopy because it was this viney stuff on the tree. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh my God. I sent my ex-husband, go get an axe. But, and he was on his way, and it's like, oh, came down.
Yeah.
No, my first experience, and not flying squirrels, but Craig Hendy and I were, as I mentioned earlier in high school, hunted, and he had a friend that he came out and joined us, and with his hawk, his red tail, and the bird was missing a toe. And I said, what happened? And he said, squirrel bit it off. I'm like, I don't ever want to fly squirrels.
It's not a big deal as long as it's not the Halleck's or power toe.
Right.
Yeah, I don't need the other ones.
Yeah, right. I think it was a little one. It was a tiny, whatever they're called.
I did notice that when my bird got bit, it was towards the end of the season, and I was just putting neosporin on it every day. And when I put that bird up, I thought it was, basically healed. It wasn't gone, but it, toe was normal. Mm. When I put that bird up for this season, it blew up like a balloon. Mm. And I had a vet bill, and luckily I was able to take it to work where there was a horse wash stall, and I'd put it on the perch, and I had to hose it with warm water and soak it, and I don't want to do that again. Give it shots in the keel.
They are some exciting flights.
Yeah.
Craig had a goshawk, and he would go after the squirrels with it, and we had a ball.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it.
Well, the irony is, and I've talked with several of my friends that, have been dart hawking for long, long time too. And, the irony is we've all seen more birds either die or get injured rabbit hawking than squirrel hawking, to be honest. There's been several birds get bit and everything else, squirrel hawking and whatever. But very rarely have we ever seen any birds die. But like when it comes to rabbit hawking, I've seen birds die on impact hitting the ground, or get messed up pretty bad, fences, the whole 9 yards. I mean, I've seen almost as many injury, if not more injuries, bunny hawking than squirrel hawking. So there's a little bit of irony, when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Granted, once again, I mean, there's a million and one ways that
my first red tail, its toe, its talent, well, not talent. I'm sorry. Its toe was in a rabbit's mouth. I mean, full in. And so I would think that the talon was preventing a rabbit from biting down. Now, would it have bit off the toe or bit into it? I have no idea, but it didn't do any damage to the hawk. So that was scary. And then the other thing was the first rabbit it took, it grabbed by the rear, and it was like a bucking bronco. It was fun to watch. He lost it, but it was, I think, one of the better flights I've ever seen with a red tail. It was so funny.
Yeah, that's frustrating whenever red tails don't learn that lesson to grab the head.
Well, he did after that.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, and so, I mean, her preference has been red tails, and what's your preference?
Long wings and Cooper's hawks. I like particular passage prairies and passage Cooper's hawks. I've never taken an IS. The ISs that I have had have been like hybrids, Gyr peregrines, Gyr prairie. But I love the prairies and the way they hit. I love Cooper's hawks and the way they can dart around, and just amazing what they can take from sparrow. And I used to fly them mostly on mallard ducks and pheasants too, and flying from the fist, of course. But no, I'd fly actually with the pheasants. I'd fly from the trees, and they followed every bit as good as a Harris hawk or a red tail. And they were fun. The dynamics were just incredible. The other thing that was interesting about Cooper's hawks is they're so greedy that if you do it right, you can teach them to fly to the fist with whatever they just caught, if it's light enough for them to carry. So the way I did that is I'd have like a live sparrow in my fist, and let's say I caught a starling on the ground 100 feet away. I just put the sparrow in my fist and let it flap its wings. It'd fly to my fist and want both. They're greedy, extremely greedy. So it was interesting. Every one of them did it. So it has to be live.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, I was just getting ready to make the comment that, I mean, you like passage prairies and passage coops. So, I mean, there's obviously a degree to you and your personality that hates yourself a little bit. They just want to like self-flagellate or self-punishment for whatever reason. We won't go into why, something, some kind of trauma in your past or something, obviously, but
whatever makes your boat float.
Yeah. No, I do like talking to folks that have had success with both, because as you both well know, they're both of those particular types of birds are known for being difficult, and for whatever reason, and a challenge.
Right.
And so,
but there are techniques.
Yeah.
For example, one of the things you can do with accipiters, and that's all I've done with the Coopers, was use the braille so they can't fly, so they can't bait. They sit on your fist, and they do a lot of hanging for the first day, and then they learn to stand without using their wings. And this is very old falconry. And this is how it used to be with goshawks and sparrowhawks. And then in India, they still use it. It's very common in Pakistan and India to use the braille. So it just takes, the one wing, you control the shoulder, and after they learn they can't bait, they settle down real quick. And by the third day, just to give them an idea of what I do for them, is I'd put a pheasant on the ground and let the Coopers just bind to it, and they did on the third day after trapping them, they'll grab it by the head and the neck, and they just pump, trying to kill it. And after that, I'm pretty cool, because I'm producing something that they like. And then after that, you can do it with a duck. And once they've done that with one duck, one pheasant, and then you get them trained, you got them doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then you can hunt the ducks and the pheasant. So it's getting into their head. That's the tricky part, but there are techniques for it. Prairie falcons, similar thing too. Like, for example, when you first enter a prairie, whatever you throw for them, you better have something live, if it's early in the training, because they're very skittish. So if you have something live, they'll drag what they have to you. Now, if you don't have, it's not live, they're going to drag it away from you. So that, again, these are the kind of things. I remember years ago, people would say, you bag a bird, do you give it something alive? You know, that was, years ago, that was frowned upon, even though people did it, but you wouldn't talk about it. But I found it, to get into their heads, there's techniques. And with, like you say, the passage coopers, you got to use the techniques you have at your disposal because they're tough. Yeah. But once you get into a prairie's head, it's kind of like what I was just saying with the coopers that was wounded and near death and all that. They become almost imprinted they scream like an eyas. It's obnoxious. But yeah, you got to get into their head. But once you get there, you're their mate. So they can be incredible birds. I like them better than peregrines. I remember George Katsiopoulos used to talk about that. Peregrines are aloof. And I have to agree, they are. Prairies are not. Prairies bond with you. Very different. And I also love the way they hit.
Yeah.
I mean, they knock things out of the sky.
It's pretty cool compared to like the more finesse-ish kind of style of like a peregrine and stuff. Yeah, prairie's just like...
But my first prairie did have finesse. She did hit. But she also used other techniques. One that I can think of that was, I think, exceptional was a Fermi Lab where we met. There's a lot of waterways in there and little ponds or flood. If it rained, there were ducks in the flooded fields. And I'd fly there. That was when I first got this prairie. It was rainy, very rainy that autumn. And I flushed a duck. And she came on a stoop, but she wasn't that high. I was trying to get her to climb, higher and higher. So anyway, she comes from behind the duck, turns upside down. Now she's moving much faster than the duck at this point because she had to stoop the speed of the stoop behind her. And she turned upside down and touched the duck, and it dropped out of the sky. What? I couldn't tell what she did. It was so fast, of course, and there was no puff of feathers or nothing like that. So when I got the duck home, I opened it up, and the chest along here was just sliced from the like the collarbone, whatever it's called in the duck, they're birds, all the way down to the breast. And so it just tore that, and it was deep. It just tore that muscle wide open. So this is a technique she knew. Another time, I was flying her in a field, and I was ready to cast her off. And this, I forgot what kind of bird it was, but it was on the ground, and it jumped up, and she went after. It was only a couple, maybe, 20 feet away. She went after it, and it dropped down into the grass. And she jumped to the ground, started jumping up and down on the grass, trying to flush it. And she did. She flushed it, and when it got up, she just nabbed it right out of the air. So that was pretty cool. Prairies can do some amazing things.
Yeah, no, I really liked the one that I had, and that unfortunately died. I wish I would have been able to see that through all the way. I keep telling myself again someday I would. That's probably one of the few species that I would consider imprinting again, just because I'm not an imprint guy. But there's something about the way those birds, whenever they do get imprinted on you and see your value and everything, they're really cool. Their personalities are really, really neat.
They are, yeah.
But to that end, then, is there anything that you all wish that you could do that you can't do living around this area? Or is there anything that do you see yourselves possibly, moving again down the road or something to pursue other types of falconry or anything? Or
not me. How about you, Cyndi?
Oh, I turned my muse into a quack house.
We don't have a bird now, so she bought ducks. So that's a duck muse now, for the moment anyway.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed in my hunting season. I did get this bird late, but bunnies in Kansas are a lot smarter. They're used to those coyotes, and
mostly they're a lot smaller too. I will say the last time I hunted in Kansas, the NAFA meet, I did notice that the bunnies looked something bigger, but in the past, I noticed that the more west you go, it seems like the bunnies, the cottontails especially, get smaller and more elusive, as opposed to bigger and just whatever. But anyway,
yeah, I think one of the problems we had is even with the dogs, they sat tight.
Yeah,
tighter than anything we've seen in Illinois.
Yeah,
so that was frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and so going back to the whole. yeah, I mean, ducks. That's yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's ironic that you said that, because the place that I just bought, one of the previous owners actually used to raise call ducks in the pole barn. It's a big reason why I bought the place. Is going to be perfect for converting it for falconry purposes and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, you got to occupy your time somehow. I guess if you don't have any birds right now. So.
Yeah, and neither one of us really like the molt. Who really does? But
Yeah.
And red tails and kestrels so plentiful. If you don't have to molt them, don't.
Yeah.
And to me, throughout my years in falconry, I've always thought trapping is just as good as training, which is just as good as hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I loved all three of them.
Yeah.
So that to me is the pinnacle of falconry, is to be able to do all three. And I did it every season. I always wanted to take a new bird to be able to not only trap but train. I enjoyed that tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah, huge sound. I mean, do you like that aspect of it as much as him?
I don't like trapping, because my experience has been drive all day and, you get 2 minutes from your house and there's one to trap. Mm-hmm. I did that a lot. Or you drive all day and you don't see them.
Yeah.
We had a terrible time finding this one. We didn't get it until after Christmas.
And they weren't moving through. This year was terrible. This last year was terrible. We would drive all day long and we'd see some haggards, no passage birds. And then one day we had to go east to Chanute, and suddenly they're about
Every pull.
20 miles east of Eureka, they were everywhere. And all passage birds everywhere. And they're like, we were in the wrong area, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hit and miss. I mean, I've noticed too that some years just, red shoulders you'd see them out everywhere. It's like, they had a mass overproduction of red shoulders. There's been some years where I've just been like, gosh, there's so many new red tails around. It's weird. It's like this cyclical thing, which I'm, sure is somewhat by design, for some reason, but.
Right. And I remember, I don't know if you know Brian Millsap. Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, I know the name.
Okay, yeah, I worked for Fish and Wildlife Service, and he with George Allen, they wrote our regulations wide. He came to our meet in Wichita when we first started and talked about various things in falconry, and they were rewriting the regs, but at that point hadn't published them yet. And he and I'd go out hawking while he was in town, and I said, what is it about this area at this time of year? It was November. There's red tails everywhere. And he says, well, this is a northern range for the wintering range. And so that's why there's such a concentration. So I'm like, oh, well, this ought to be good for Cyndi, right? No, it wasn't until December that they actually started moving through. So it's like, darn, that was tough.
Yeah. Well, if it was like the same thing every year over and over again,
we'd be bored.
Yeah,
You're right.
It'd be boring.
This is too easy.
Yeah, for sure. As much as we hope for that sometimes, but
yes.
But yeah. So I mean, out of curiosity, then, what other kind of things have you done, kind of in conjunction with falconry? I mean, I know you just presented me with a book that you helped write and stuff. I mean, what is that the only book that you've helped write or co-wrote?
Well, no, I shouldn't say the only. The reason I wrote that book was Hal Webster had asked me to write a chapter in North American Falconry and Hunting Hogs, the 9th edition, the latest. And he asked me to write on the legal aspects of falconry because I had done so much research on the laws and predominantly federal laws for falconry. So I did that, and it was way too long for him. He said, you got to shorten this up a lot. So I did. I think I got to around 40 pages from 100 or something like that. And so Dave, who owns Western Sporting, he asked me, he says, well, why don't you just expand it and let's make it a book? And, and Hal was for that. He thought it was a great idea. So that's what I did. And then I think a few years after North American Falconry and Hunting Hogs 9th edition was published, then a couple of years later I had finished this book and published it, and had Bobby Kennedy endorsed it because a common friend had gotten it to him. A guy who worked for Reagan was appointed by Reagan in the Department of Interior as the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Interior. and then a legal scholar from University of Chicago. He's a constitutional scholar and also endorsed it. So I had those 3 endorsements. And what's interesting is Bobby, is known as a liberal. This legal scholar, he's known as a libertarian. And the guy, of course, who worked for Reagan was known as a conservative. Mm-hmm. So I had endorsement from the 3 spectrums.
Yeah.
So that was quite a feat.
Yeah.
So it's the name is the legal aspects of falconry, and it's about our rights, all about rights, and the founding principles, following the Constitution, and how far we've strayed. I mean, considerably strayed from the constitutional principles and our founding principles. And so the book covers how far we've strayed and how extreme the laws have been applied to. These crazy laws, as far as I'm concerned, they're crazy, have been applied to falconry more than anything else. I mean, wildlife in general, wildlife take is bad, the way they treat us. For example, they think it's a privilege to take wildlife. That's impossible. Because if it was a privilege, we never would have survived. We would have, we had to take natural resources to survive. So it has to be a right of the first order. Otherwise, we could never have survived until, like people come to the United States, they had to hunt. And there's no question they had to hunt. And it was part of the culture, of course. And so the idea that it's a privilege comes from an 1892 Supreme Court decision that was eventually overturned for that type of interpretation. They said states own the wildlife. Well, that's wrong. It's no one owns it, and that's what the Supreme Court eventually said. No one owns wildlife until taken into possession. What the state has a right to is manage it on behalf of the people. They don't own it, and like I said, the people don't own it either. No one does. And this goes back to Rome, and I write about that. In Rome and in England, it was understood. Well, in England, the king owned everything, right? So like for swans, for example, swans were like our turkeys. Everybody loved eating swans. And every swan in England belonged to the king. And if you had permission to take swan, from him, you could take swan. So England was a little different, but there was a lot of similarities still. So that the book is really covering these rights. And so I go into great depth about it. And I also address the peregrine, which was the eastern and autumn peregrine went extinct. Western and autumn did not. Frank Beebe talked about this. He said the reason why they went extinct, and they were a larger in autumn, much larger than the western. And he said the reason why is because their primary prey during the nesting season was a passenger pigeon. So the tiercel is the one who will determine the success of an eyrie. So if he can bring back plenty of food, he can feed the female and feed the eyases. So that the males determine the success of the brood, and it's all depending upon what they're optimized for. And the male anatum in the east was optimized for being able to catch the passenger pigeon and carry it back. And as Frank also said that, and it has to make it back to the nest with other birds of prey trying to rob it. So, you have all these dynamics that are working against this tiercel. And if everything's not right, the brood won't make it. They'll die. So an eastern autumn went extinct in the 50s, but DDT didn't even come on the scene until 1947. They were almost gone at that point. I remember Brian McDonald, who used to trap peregrines back then along tundra. He's the one with one other guy who, Assocation Island, he trapped with a friend there, and he also would take eastern and autumns from the nest. But he said by the time he got into it in the early 40s, there were only a handful of nests or eyries left. So by that point, they were almost gone. So that's why Beebe points that out, that DDT did not do it. It may have contributed in the very, very last, but it didn't kill him. A lot of other forces in play, and I write about that. I have a chapter dedicated to that.
Well, that's another interesting take that a lot of people I've not heard a lot of people discuss yet.
Right.
So
yeah,
and it makes sense. I mean, there was a lot of things that I think suffered whenever that particular species went extinct. The passenger pigeons and stuff. But it's I don't know. I mean, it's there's like you said, I mean, it's hard for any just one factor to really cause any particular.
Yes.
It's usually got to be a combination of a few things.
Well, and speaking of which, nest robbing, for of eggs, the oologists, as they're called, would collect eggs. Egg collectors. Peregrines were one of the most coveted of all eggs. And in 1920s, they were going for $20 for what do we call it? The bunch, whatever. Clutch. I'm sorry. Yeah, the clutch.
The bunch.
That's a bunch. Sorry.
Egg bunch.
Yeah. And in the 1920s, my grandfather was raising kids in Chicago, and that's more than he made in a week. So that's a lot of money. So there was real incentive. And so there were stories of people being at the base of a cliff waiting for the female to lay the clutch so they can climb up and get it. And then, if there was a second clutch, then, another person was waiting. They wiped them out. That's where most of the danger, the wiping out, if you will, happened. But the passenger pigeon was gone by this point. So now you have these robbers, and you've got the main prey species is gone. They didn't stand a chance. Yeah. So that was a contributing factor. Just like you said, there's multiple reasons for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And what about you, Cyndi? Have you really done much outside of, any kind of side falconry endeavors as well? Or as you kind of, I heard you mentioned, earlier that you just consider yourself just a basic lowly hawker.
Yeah.
She's an equestrian.
I'm a schmuck.
But she's into horses. So that would be fun to go after prairie chickens on horseback.
Oh. Yeah, I've talked to a few folks that are into the horse world and stuff too, and once again, said it 100 times, I can't wrap my head around that world.
No,
I don't get it. I don't even try. If it's your thing, awesome, but that's a whole other world that I'm just like, there's just no way I even have the time to wrap my head around that world.
Well, and I never have, but being around her, I live vicariously through her, so I enjoy it that way.
Yeah.
But no, she taught me how to ride, somewhat.
Yeah.
But I'm not good at all.
I never even tried to get on a horse with a hawk. In Illinois, where am I going to hawk from horseback? My hawking spots were railroad tracks.
Sure.
So never even
Industrial
went down
parks.
that avenue.
Yeah.
And horses are so bloody expensive, and they limp, and their saddles don't fit, and so they limp more. I'm just so over it.
Yeah. Well,
I miss it. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I would ride someone else's horse in a heartbeat.
Sure.
But I don't have a connection yet.
Before we moved, a couple of weeks before we moved, she was thrown, and she was launched, and she landed in a very, very bad way, and it crushed 2 vertebrae.
Yeah.
So she's been suffering from that too. So even riding might be tough for her now.
Yeah. Known plenty of people that have been thrown and tossed and
hurt.
Yeah.
Part of the game.
Yeah. Hurted.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and also to that end, you with all of the interests that you've had with all the laws, rules, regulations, rights versus privilege debates and all that. I mean, I remember you mentioning earlier too that you had probably some dealings with that in helping and starting an organization or two, correct?
Right. Yes, it was a Wild Raptor Take Conservancy. I came up with the concept in around 2000. And I reached out to George Katsiopoulos and a guy named Mike Beebe. Mike, they guess, is a very distant relative to Frank, as Frank said they came over in the 1600s. So Mike and George were very interested in the idea. Shortly after that, they both passed away. I reached out to Frank Beebe and asked him if he'd be the interim president. He was happy to be. So he helped get things started. Ron Krupa was a founding member, Kirk Williams, Rob Selsky, Scott Hartman, and I think a couple others. George Katsiopoulos, as I just said, but he died shortly thereafter. So we started it with the idea that Bob Berry had for the Raptor Breeding Association. So, he was the club was a representation of falconers who are just breeders, let's say, but all of them were falconers, of course. And so I thought, that's a great idea. I mean, because of all the breeding, a lot of people aren't trapping anymore. And if this keeps going in the direction it's going, that knowledge will be gone. Because it's so much more convenient to buy a bird, no question.
Yeah.
So we started, putting our heads together and starting to write articles. We had the newsletter called The Passenger. We're still publishing that, but now our focus is different. Hal Webster joined the club, became the Western director, mountain director, I think, and he came up with the idea of changing the name to American Falconry Conservancy because he felt that NAFA was not looking out for our interests, our rights as falconers. NAFA has said many a time they believe the birds have more rights than we do. They're superior to our interests. So Hal didn't like that, of course, nor did we, and so we changed it to American Falconry Conservancy to be a North American falconry group rather than just dedicated to taking birds from the wild. And so then it evolved from there and still going strong. We're actually in a lawsuit right now. It started with the Fish and Wildlife Service in California, suing for our Fourth Amendment right, these inspections, as they call them. It's a search. Well, that's illegal. They can't do it. But they've been getting away with it. And so we sued, and we're in the middle of it. It hasn't been concluded yet. And it's been a long, drawn-out one, especially when COVID hit. That just stopped everything for a few years. So we're hoping for the best. Personally, I'm hoping it would be ideal if it went to the Supreme Court because then it would be nationwide. Whereas right now we've been to the appellate court, and it's going back and forth from the lower court to the appellate. But if it went to the Supreme Court, that would be ideal. And it's a good case for the Supreme Court because the argument is your right, the Fourth Amendment right to being safe from the government interference and inspections and so on, that has limits, and it does. So, for example, if you produce alcohol, you have to submit to government intrusion of inspecting your facilities where you produce them. Food is another one. You have to submit to the inspections. There's places for it, and the Supreme Court has talked on, but those are rare, very rare, and they have to be extreme cases that can't be resolved any other way. It's the only way you're going to maintain things is by having these inspections for the safety and security of the people, health, safety, and security, the primary purposes of government. So that's why the Pacific Legal Foundation, who fights for our constitutional rights, has been to the Supreme Court many times, and they're more than happy to take it all the way. So hopefully we'll have some answers soon.
It's been 6 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and what are some of for the people that aren't really aware of this organization or its existence, really? I mean, what's a couple of the other primary goals, that you all have in mind for it then?
Well, one of them, the first one that I had when we were Wild Raptor Take Conservancy, was there were a lot of states that were closed to non-residents. So myself and a couple other guys, I initiated it where I got a lot of states to open their doors to non-residents. Then the next president, because I was president for a while, he took on a couple and opened those up. The only ones that aren't open is Connecticut, which they won't. I don't even think they let their own falconers trap.
They don't have resident take either.
Yeah. There's West Virginia. We haven't tried there because there was nothing really that was special about West Virginia that we thought would be worth all the effort you have to put into it. It takes a lot of effort. And then Hawaii, of course, because it doesn't have falconry.
Yeah. So
those are only three, but all the other states that were closed, we opened. So that was we're pretty much done with that one. So after we get this Fourth Amendment issue, there isn't a lot left for us. And I've even said to everybody in the club, I wouldn't be opposed to the club shutting down and all of us go into NAFA and try to get NAFA to think more about human rights, U.S. citizen rights, and look at our interests in our birds are important, but they can't supersede the rights of Americans, and that's been the argument. And there's NAFA has been slowly, moving our way, like ownership. We got that one. The Fish and Wildlife Service, no, you don't own them. You remember that case I mentioned in 1892? From that one, they would never relinquish that, even though the Supreme Court overturned it. So NAFA would not let go of that either. We got the Fish and Wildlife Service. George Allen wrote email to Dan Cicchini saying, no, they're right. You own your birds, wild taken or domestic bred. If you remember, Bobby Kennedy wrote the paper on domestic bred ownership, and it was a great paper, phenomenal. Got a lot of good stuff out of it. But he stuck with domestic bred birds. I know people call them captive bred, but I like domestic bred better. So we got George Allen to agree, and the way we did that is Bill Horn, who worked for Reagan, I mentioned to you, who was the Assistant Secretary of Interior. He went to the solicitor's office for the Department of Interior. The solicitor's office is a legal arm of the Department of Interior. Each department has their own solicitors. And he went to him and said, what is this? This is foreign to me. I used to be Assistant Secretary, and I oversaw falconry. This is new to me. Where is this coming from? And he looked into it and found no one at the legal level thought this was acceptable. And so they went to George Allen and said, and this is the way Bill Horn put it, he said, you will withdraw that statement or we're going to chop off the branch you're standing on. And so George wrote that to Dan Cicchini when Dan was the president of NAFA, and ever since then. So now NAFA has come more our way, recognizing our right and ownership. So we're hoping that we can get them further, more in our direction. So It's all about rights.
Well, and, I think that most people can agree, I say most on purpose, but I think most people can agree that being as we're such a small community, such small numbers, it's really important for us to try and find as much common ground and a unified front as possible whenever possible, because we're just too small of a crowd, to have any collective voice that's going to be dissonant or separated. So, well,
and the government officials, that's exactly what they look for. So when we're divided like we are, they take full advantage of it. So they're like, this side doesn't want rights. This side does. We like the side that doesn't like the citizen rights. And so they looked out more for NAFA than for us. But that's why we've had to go to court. That's why we've had to use the Bill Horn. But his specialty in law was wildlife, Migratory Bird Treaty Act and others too. So he was a perfect person for us. So he's done a phenomenal job of getting our rights. For example, our ability to have as many birds as we want that are domestic bred, that was him and I who worked on that together. They weren't going to give us that. They wanted that limit. So again, he went to that solicitor and others. He met a lot of the people in the Fish and Wildlife Service as the falconry regs were being developed, and he got us a lot of other things. I can't even remember what they are now, but he worked hard and he got us a lot of things in the regs that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Yeah, he was great.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of discuss or touch on, as far as some things in the same vein before we move on and get your favorite hunting stories and stuff like that? And
I think an interesting one is Frank Beebe. My friend Scott Hartman from Illinois, falconer. He said, maybe after publishing the book I did, he said, maybe you should write a book about Frank. And I said, that's a great idea. So I called Frank and said, would you be interested? And he said, sure. So I interviewed him like every Saturday for several months. And that was just before he died. I talked to him the night before he passed. And his wife said he just loved talking about his life and telling all the stories. So I'm hoping that I eventually will get a book out on him. And I think I'll call it The Last Great Naturalist, because you can't really become a naturalist like he was, given the rules and regulations we have surrounding us. When he was young, you could do anything, right? Not that we want to go back there, but he learned so much about nature and wildlife and so on from his experiences in trapping and hunting. And then he said trappers and gold miners who knew how to live off the land taught him how to live off the land. So when he'd go up north for jeers and tundra peregrines, he'd be dropped off in a helicopter, and he had a backpack, maybe a little food, but he had his rifle and bullets, and that's how he ate. And he made fun of people from the Peregrine Fund because they had radios, they had all kinds of food, they had medicine, and so on and so forth. And if they got into trouble, they could be yanked out in a second, or hours maybe. His was dropped off, see you in 3 weeks. And if he didn't come to the rendezvous, he was dead. So he was proud of that.
Yeah. There's a different dimension to that.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, he was pretty wild. But I think the most interesting thing is, and that made him as much a great naturalist as he was, is he worked at the Victoria Museum in British Columbia. And he was the illustrator for all the birds, insects, all the wildlife and plants, the flora and fauna of British Columbia. He did all the illustrations in the various books they put out. So the scientists would write about each species, a number of different for every book they put out, and he'd do all the illustrations. And he said, and I asked him once, I said, why are you so instinctive? You understand wildlife, not just raptors, but everything. You just see how things connect. And he said, there's a good reason for that. He said, for every species I did an illustration on, I read everything I could find on that species. So I could put the perspective, what it looked like and what was its natural surrounding. And he said, from that, I learned the connections between species. So for example, if a bird is sitting on a bush, he'd make sure it was the right bush this bird would probably be found on because there'd be food there for it, or the ability to escape from something chasing it. So he had that kind of insight for every species. And so because of that, he was able to connect dots that no one else was able to. He said even the scientists at the museum would come to him to ask questions of things, how they connect that was outside their realm. And I said, well, why didn't they go to the other scientists there? He says, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're stepping on their turf. They don't allow that. The first thing they'd say is, well, why do you want to know that? That's my turf. You stay in your own lane. Don't cross mine. So he said they'd come to me because it was safe. So he was brilliant when it came to understanding wildlife and nature in general. Yeah, it was awesome getting the insights from him.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another neat project, because we don't have enough in our lives usually,
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's neat. I think it's cool that when people go out of their way to, take on extra endeavors and projects and things of that nature to, especially whenever they're inspired to recognize other people that have contributed to what we do and everything. So that's cool. Well, I guess, before we wrap up, what's one of you guys' favorite hunting or, flying experiences together? And, after we talk about that a little bit, then, you each can give a piece of advice or sentiment or whatever to current and prospective falconers, and we can probably wrap this up. So.
Okay. Cyndi, do you have any favorite experiences that we've had together?
Just being with you. Even though I was very disappointed in my first hunting season in Kansas, the walks were beautiful. We have this walk-on property that's near the house, and it was along a creek, and we did actually see 2 rabbits run, and the bird did catch a rabbit there, but we didn't see it. We just heard it screaming.
Yeah, I think the experience out there in the Flint Hills is just wonderful. It's so beautiful there. I just can't get enough of that. Even if the hunting wasn't that great, I just enjoy walking out there. And it's so pretty. And, we're right by the river. I forgot the name of the river. Do you remember, Cyndi?
By our house?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
We're bad, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's quail there. And the rabbits, we found a few. And the prairie chickens come in right next to our house. There's a bean field. At least this year it was a bean field. And there was typically around 20 to 30 prairie chickens coming in. And sometimes they land like 100 feet from the house. That's how close the field was. And so that was fun to watch. It was neat. And when I get a bird, I can't wait to fly them. And then right near where the chickens were there by our house, there's a pond. And it's always got ducks in it. So what I figure I'll do is I'll put the bird up. If the bird doesn't catch a prairie chicken, then they come back overhead and they flush a duck. That's the plan anyway, but best laid plans.
Yeah, because those always work so well.
Oh, yeah, sure. No doubt.
Yeah. So, I mean, no other, a favorite, flight or anything else, together then that you can remember? Or
not together, because we haven't really done a lot of hunting together because we're relatively new.
Right, sure.
But I think, there's a number of flights I had. I had a Deer prairie that was... It was a great duck hawk, but it never learned. I had it for like 4 years. Never learned to wait for the ducks to clear water. So I always had to fly small water. And there was this one pond that was, was very small, and the bird waited on at a nice pitch. So I flushed a couple of ducks, and the bird's stooping, and the ducks turning, trying to get back to the pond. And as the falcon is coming down, just about ready to hit it, it swerves. And so the bird had to swerve, the falcon had to swerve with it. And it grabbed it, had to bind to it in such a way that they tumbled. They did somersaults in the air. And then when it hit the ground, they did somersaults. And I thought that was pretty spectacular. Never seen anything like that. And that was fun. Another thing about that bird was twice in the time I had it, it would take doubles. It would, because of the prairie in it, it would smack the duck, hit it to the ground, and then there'd be more ducks below it, and then it would bind to a duck. So twice it did that same thing.
Nice.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
That was fun stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
Oh, and one other thing that bird did that I thought was interesting. Again, ducks. There was a puddle because of rain, and the ducks had to stand in it. They couldn't swim. It was just so shallow. And bird went up, and I flushed them, and the ducks started going towards this pond we knew was there. Well, the ducks made it to the pond, but it went out of sight, went down low where the pond was at, and then let's see, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so the bird followed them down, came back up, and came back towards me. Mm-hmm. And by this point, the ducks that were left in the puddle in front of me flushed, and they tried to follow the other ducks. Well, my bird's now coming back. Mm-hmm. They didn't know it was a falcon. Mm-hmm. And so it met a duck head on and with its fist and killed it in a horizontal stoop, if you want to call it that. It crushed its skull. Its eye and brains were coming out. That's amazing.
Yeah.
They were level. So the speed of both was enough to do that.
Sure.
So that was pretty amazing. So that bird was pretty cool, the things it pulled off, but it never waited till ducks cleared water.
Yeah, that'd be annoying.
Yes, that was.
Yeah. And you, Cyndi?
Fall River is where we live.
That's right.
I had to look it up.
Okay.
That's pretty pitiful. I really appreciate this last hawk that I had. Looking for rabbits for it was murderous. A friend of ours gave us permission to hunt his property. And in Kansas, there's a lot of junk piles. And we're kind of far away, and you hear this thud. And I think I heard it screaming too. So I'm trying to run my old broken back to it because I'm of the mindset you got to get there, in case they need help. It was his first one. I don't want him to lose it. Mm-hmm. And I got there, and I couldn't even see him. He was amidst this junk barbed wire, and I'm screaming for him because I did finally see him and had it by the hair of his chinny chin. So I grabbed its head, and I couldn't get myself out of it.
I finally caught up and had to help her out, her and the bird.
Yeah. So glad I wasn't alone that day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, That's always fun. It's always those moments where you're happy if you are with somebody else. 'Cause there's been a couple times where I've had to be pulled off partially frozen ponds and stuff like that to, after getting a hand on a bunny and a bird, and couldn't. Yeah.
Now what?
Fly on your belly. You can't exactly reverse snake out off of ice, and it's not very easy to do. So
Nerve-wracking.
yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, and so, what pieces of advice do you think you'd like to leave current and prospective falconers then?
I think falconers mostly know what we contribute to wildlife interest and management and contributions and so on. Of course, Frank was the one who discovered how to breed peregrines in captivity. I know Heinz Meng was given credit, but Heinz admitted to me that Frank taught him. It's falconry that did this. Falconers offer like a naturalist type of perspective, like Frank, and it makes me think about when people first get into or used to get into falconry, they were 11 to 13 years old. I was 11, and a lot of people were. And that was a common time. And many years later, I read about how fish and game departments say, yes, that's an important time to get into hunting. If we can catch people between like 11 and 13, they will be hunters for life frequently, more often than not. They may get out of it for a while they're chasing boys or girls, but they eventually will get back into hunting. Same thing with falconry. And I think falconry gives us a perspective on wildlife and nature far more than just hunting. And not to say I don't respect hunting, whether it's guns or archery, but we have an intimate relationship with birds that even raptor biologists can't possibly come close to accomplishing, because in the scientific community, you're supposed to stay very, very distant from that which you're observing. Even that, they say, influences the bird just by, osmosis is the kind of the theory I get. I'm not sure. It's kind of crazy to me. But anyway, you're supposed to stay as remote from the animal you're studying as possible. Falconers were intimate. We learn all about them. That's why Frank was able to figure it out when the raptor biologists couldn't. Remember, the Peregrine Fund people tried. They couldn't do it. And Frank taught Heinz. Heinz taught Tom Cade. And that's how it worked. Tom could not do it. He couldn't figure it out. We can. We can do these kind of things. So in falconry, as you probably know, that's where most of your vets, your good vets, raptor vets come from, is falconry. Raptor biologists, that's where they come from. So much of our knowledge on raptors comes from falconry. And look at the trapping, the banding, the type of stuff they do, knowing migratory routes, that's from falconers. So what we contribute to the nature world and to our understanding is, it's amazing. And I think falconers need to remember, don't try to keep people out of falconry. You definitely want people who are going to be dedicated, but try to keep it going. We need to keep it going because from us, knowledge evolves and expands. And so we offer the most to raptor conservation than anybody else. So that's the advice I would give to falconers is try to promote it, but only to those, obviously, who are truly dedicated.
Cool.
To go off that point as well, I have two things. When I got started, and cut me off, maybe this isn't a problem anymore, but when I got started, I started with a kestrel, and there was nothing to read about kestrels for the most part. And I had, what's the book? Mullenix's book. It wasn't that helpful for me. And I'd go to game dinners, which I'm kind of a wallflower, but if I asked somebody, that I knew that flew kestrels, they'd go, ask your sponsor. I'm like, I did. Now I want your opinion.
And it's because they didn't have the answers. Go ask your sponsor.
Yeah, but that was, they didn't want to step on your sponsor's toes, which I think is stupid. I want opinions, and then I'll make my own mind up, or I'll try everything and see what works, see what sticks. And then the other thing, I don't know what your audience is like, but for the people that poo-poo falconry, that's evil, it's mean. We're not doing anything that birds don't do. We're just got a front row seat.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why people can't understand that. And yeah, you may help it a little bit, but, that's why, 80% of first-year birds don't make it through their first winter, and we're helping them.
As a matter of fact, I gave a talk on falconry. I lived in South Dakota for a while, Brookings, where South Dakota State University is located. And once a month there would be, at this bar, this guy put together invitations to people who would speak on some subject that professors and graduate students would enjoy listening to. So I was invited to talk about falconry, and I was really kind of outside of what they normally talked about or who they invited, but they thought it'd be an interesting talk. And I was warned by the guy who put these together every month that you're going to be attacked. Some professors already said, that's slavery, and they're going to be real accusatorial of you. So be prepared. I went, okay, thank you. He said about halfway through my presentation, they whispered to him, falconry is awesome. I mean, because I talked about what I just said a little while ago, we bring so much to knowledge about raptors, medicine and everything else. And because of that, they said, you know what? We can't see anything wrong with this. This is a good thing. Yeah. And they kept quiet on it. And he said it was the most well-attended and made the most money donations of anything they ever did before.
Yeah, I mean, kind of delving into that world a little bit over this past year myself, I can attest to that it's a subject that people of all backgrounds, ages, whatever, they find it interesting. And even like I've even done like talks or presentations for even, different, like your low income, type, kid type, after school activity type deals, ranging from that all the way to homeschool groups to everywhere. And the strange thing is even some of these audiences that normally you wouldn't be able to keep their attention, or they normally are not well behaved for, or whatever, you bring out a bird and you start talking to them, and all of a sudden everybody kind of just shuts up and starts paying attention. It's kind of this weird, it's fascinating enough, and it gets people's attention and captivates them enough that, it's just not something that people are used to being able to see sometimes ever. And so, and from that angle, there's a lot of room for expansion, growth, and stuff in people's minds. We having that permanent seat, or that permanent, headspace, and living rent free in their minds in that regard. I've found that already just in the short amount of time I've been in that world too. So
I was a Cub Scout leader when my son was young. My oldest boy was young. From the beginning right through the whole time. And I volunteered the second year because a Cub master who was the head of the pack was moving on to Boy Scouts with his son. So he asked someone to take over. And so I took it. And so I ran it for those next handful of years. And every month we had, the pack meeting. And I had to have something to keep the kids' attention, right, to entertain and teach and whatever. So once a year, because there's always new kids coming in, I would do a talk on falconry and bring my bird in. And like you just said, they were captivated. I mean, that's the one time they were all very quiet and just listening.
Eventually, you still lose the attention spans of certain age groups, but overall, for the most part, it's just not something that people get to deal with or see in person all the time. And, I just think that there's a lot of room for us to, continue to kind of captivate and educate and everything else. And, I hope that people continue to want to do that. So
we can contribute a lot to the general public. We don't have to recruit from try to get everybody into it, but have the public aware. I mean, Heinz Meng told me how he went on Johnny Carson, and Brian McDonald talked about this too. If you remember Brian at all, now he was an Eastern Falconer, but he helped found NAFA, get it going, I should say. And they would go on TV shows, and Johnny Carson was one. And the idea was to try to get the raptors under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. They try to give them protection, both state and federal. And they did, make a lot of progress because people were shooting them. And Fish and Wildlife Service people used to shoot them.
Yeah, there used to be
bounty.
Bounty tags.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Assocation Island was found that way. Yeah. I forgot who was that falconer from the East Coast that was really well known and got into it in the 30s, one of the first. His father and a Fish and Wildlife Service officer were fishing off of Assocation, and what they were fishing for dried up, and so were bored, and they had their rifles with them, so they started shooting peregrines on the beach. And he brought a bunch home because he knew his son was into this stuff. Birds of prey. He thought they were neat. And I think he knew that he liked peregrines. And so he brings these birds home, dead. And of course, he wasn't very happy about that. But he was like, where did you get these? And he says, well, that was on Assocation. And that's how Assocation was discovered. Fish and Wildlife Service guy and whatever his name was, father, shooting them. And obviously, it was not illegal. Like I said, there was bounties on them. So, and that's why people like Hines wanted to make people aware that, we really need to conserve them. They're at the apex. We need to conserve birds of prey, and so we need to protect them. And really, that's how they came under the protection. Audubon was very much a part of that. We worked together for that one time. Otherwise, we're at odds with each other. But we did work together at that moment in time, and we got them under the MBTA. Yeah. Not many people know that falconers were a big part of that.
Well, a lot of people don't know that falconers were a big part of a lot of conservation efforts that revolved around raptors, period.
Right.
So
true.
Yeah, it's that's part of what I usually cover in my talks too. And nobody can hardly ever, I think I've maybe had one or two people total out of the ones that I've done raise their hand and be able to give me the right answer for whenever I ask who was responsible for, largely responsible for a lot of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, if there's nothing else though that you feel like, any last thing you want to cover or anything we've forgotten or anything, we can go ahead and come close to wrapping this up. I mean, do you feel like we covered everything you guys wanted to cover?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. No, it's been nice getting a chance to know you guys. And, I mean, continues to be one of the big silver linings and continuing to do all this. And I like being in the same room with new people and talking shop and getting to know people and stuff and their backgrounds. And I've been very blessed, I think. And, it's not been, just pure fortune. I mean, I've poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the effort, and sleep deprived myself and everything else a lot for all this. But we all have our own little, labors of love. And like I said, getting to meet folks like yourself and talking shop and in person is kind of like my reward for that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to hawk together.
Yeah.
You live in Kansas now?
No, Southern Indiana.
Oh, you're still in Indiana. Okay. Yeah, I used to go down to Indiana quite a bit. Paul Hoffsummer. Paul was my photographer for the 1999 NAFA meet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was a great guy. And I knew a lot of the others, but it's been so long now since I've been down there. But
yeah, I
used to go down there almost every year for a while.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, my goal is to make it back to Kansas at least one time over the season. I think my hunting license that I got during NAFA meet of last year. So I mean, I'm still technically good to hunt in Kansas until December of this year.
Awesome.
So
well,
I'd like to.
We're going to have another meet, a field meet. It'll be in Eureka or El Dorado, but probably Eureka. 30 miles east of here. That's where we had it last in November. So maybe you can come to that and show you some chickens, show you ducks, show you quail.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
Great.
What will you be flying, do you think?
I'm mainly probably going to go back to old reliable again, red tails and squirrels, and hopefully I can get me a red tail this year that's going to work with my dachshunds, and that's where my happy place is.
Well, we have a young falconer. He's 17 years old. Him and his father pretty much put they ran it, the meet. I oversaw things, but they ran it because they had all these fields that they could take us to. So I'm like, it's all yours. Show people around, and they did, and it was wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
We do know where there's some good rabbit spots now. We've discovered them. So
perfect.
And there's also state park that will have squirrels as well, and plenty of trees, plenty of forest. So we'd definitely be able to get you into some good slips.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
so
great to have you.
Yeah, no, it'd be awesome, and we'll stay in touch on it. But again, thank you for taking the time today to do this, and hope it didn't cut into your day too awful much. So.
No. It was supposed to rain, and it did. So we're not like we're going to be outside.
Yeah.
I was just going to sit inside and read.
Yeah,
that would have been it.
I like I said, I hope that you guys continue to be able to have fun together, tolerate each other okay, in the field. And
he's a great assistant. He rolls up the crayons line amazingly.
Yeah, nice. Everybody's got to have their roles.
She's brown nosing me, so I'll keep doing it.
Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, thank you all again. It's been fun, and we'll hopefully get a chance to do that this season. So
that'd be great.
Yeah, appreciate you all.
Thank
you.